Vanessa.
I'm definitely keeping that in. That's wonderful. Hello and welcome to Where Creatives Connect. My name's Jamie Sharp, and if you've not been with us so far, what are you doing? This is the podcast that brings you the behind the scenes of creatives from literally all over the world, their processes, their journeys, their lives, and what makes them tick and what makes them do what they do so well. I am in one of the most creative cities that I know of in the southern hemisphere, Wellington, and I'm joined by somebody who every single time I meet them surprises me with the array of things that they are involved with, that they are skilled at, acting, directing, educating young people and older people, running fringe festivals, and has an amazing voice, which I remember clearly when I first heard you sing, was at NIDS, and genuinely I was like, I think there's a recording on in the auditorium, and I walked in and it was you. So that was my first time. I remember it very clearly. Vanessa, welcome to the podcast.
Kia ora. Lovely to see you, Jeremy.
That's all right. How are you doing?
I'm exhausted. I'm just off the back of, and also to give this some context, I took my amazing Fringe team out last night to thank them, and we had some food and many a drink. They were determined to get me drunk because, of course, I'm so busy through the festival, I don't, really get much of a chance. So, and we had a great time, and then we did an escape room, and my team won.
Yay! Sounds like richly deserved drinks.
Yeah, no, it was so much fun. So much fun. So, yes, I'm feeling a little worse for wear, but you've probably hit me at a time I'll have absolutely no filter whatsoever.
Perfect. Well, that might be perfect for this.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm going to ask you a question that we've already kind of touched upon today as something that's really difficult to answer. So I'm going to start there.
Sure.
If you are travelling somewhere, say you're on a plane, and somebody says, what do you do for a living? How on earth do you answer that?
Yeah, we have, to give this also more context, Jamie and I have been chatting for the last 2 hours, so it'll be interesting. Oh my God, I've said that. I struggled with this for a long time because, much like yourself, I'm a multi-disciplinary artist, and I used to go, and I could see people switching off, and I go, I'm a producer, director, writer, a musician, a coordinator, market, and I just see people going, So now I just say, I'm an artist.
Brilliant. It's a lovely way to kind of encourage what all the things are that you do to the surface. Do you ever change that answer depending on who you're speaking to, if they sort of get what you might do a bit more?
Obviously, it depends on context. So, and now because I run the New Zealand Fringe Festival, I'm the New Zealand Fringe Festival director. So that, but then I also, I'm an administrator because I run the festival, but I am an artist first and foremost. And it's really important for us here at the festival that the festival's artist-led. So it does vary depending on where I meet them, or if I meet them at a gig, that then they don't tend to ask. But yeah, it definitely depends on the context with which I'm meeting them.
For sure. Now, we are in the Fringe office right now.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Can you tell?
This is a Fringe beer with thanks to Garage Project.
It's delicious. It's very nice. You've just come off the back of your second Fringe run since you've been in charge.
Yes.
How was it?
It was extraordinary. Last year, the first year that I came in as the director of the festival, we were marred by operating the entire festival, or 24 days of the festival, entirely under red restrictions. So it was a nightmare, and they were sort of called out 3 weeks before the festival opened. So we had this amazing program. I was so excited. It was my first year in. I came in guns blazing. I've got big plans for the festival. And it was really hard, and it was heartbreaking, and we had shows sort of dropping like flies, towards the end of the festival. So it was really hard, and it felt we ended the festival all exhausted, and also my amazing team, because we had to work in bubbles to keep people safe. So if anyone had to isolate, we could still support the artists. So it was really hard. So none of the joys that we get to do of going to shows, and I saw lots of shows, but we were all isolated. It was hard. It was really hard. This year, I'm really proud of the fact that we've had the most successful Fringe to date. So not only has it been the largest Fringe ever, we doubled the income for our artists of any previous festival. So the most successful festival, we doubled it this year. So that's down to, I think, an exceptional program. I'm really proud of the program, but also the community feeling buoyant again, and also wanting to, we're really lucky in Wellington. We have an amazing community who really support artists. And I think they were thirsty for work. So, and again, a fantastic program.
Amazing. Now, the Fringe is somewhere that people generally break into their own. It's a chance for them to explore maybe a new part of their artistic license or their artistic feel. Were there any standout shows this year that really shone a light?
I'm super proud of our Best in Fest this year. I may not be Māori presenting, but I am tangata whenua, and I'm also mana whenua, so my whānau are from this area. And when I first was approached about taking on the job, I sent CCAT, which is the trust that holds the Fringe, and Cuba Dupa, which is the other biggest street festival in New Zealand. I sent them back a 2-page of what I thought was wrong with the festival. I was like, it's very Pākehā and queer theatre centric, and that Fringe should be more than that. I'm a multidisciplinary artist. I was like, I want to make more space for other things. I told them how much work I think needed to happen, and that they either kind of had to be on board or I'm not. And they were like, and I was, if I'm honest, I was politely trying to say no. And Drew came back, sounds like you're really passionate and you have a vision. That's what you read in. Oh, no. Yeah. And I was like, great, he's got me now. And I can't argue with him, I certainly do. And I came up after post-drama school, Fringe, you know, I'm a Fringe fan. Yeah. It was where I launched my career and where I've consistently come back as an artist when I had new work that I wanted to try out and new plays that I'd written. So I knew what Fringe could be. And I've also worked in Fringe in Edinburgh. So I, as either performer or help facilitate or produce other shows. So I came in guns blazing. As I say, last year was frustrating because I didn't have the opportunity to implement all the things, all the positive changes I wanted to do. This year, and since that happened, I have established a whātau fund, which is with amazing friends who are just across, that's why I gesture across the road, Creative New Zealand, one of their offices across the road, which is great because I can keep an eye on them. See where they're out there counting money and they can see how hard we're working. So we established with Pacifica CNZ, they also knew my kaupapa and I said I really want to, when I started the festival, the inclusion was 4% of Māori, that's what I'm saying, wow. Māori and Pacifica artists, and that's not, I mean for me, I am in this unique situation where we have an amazing arrangement with 5 international Fringe festivals, 3 of which are based in Australia, and then Edinburgh and San Diego Fringe. So we have awards that sends artists internationally. For me personally, what makes us unique on the world stage is Māori and Pacifica voice. And don't get me wrong, the best work will always get sent. But if that voice isn't being represented, that's not okay with me. So I have really been working on creating space for those artists and inviting them, making them feel welcome and trying to get rid of a lot of the hurdles which stop, you know, trying to level the playing field. And I'm really proud that in 2 seasons I've managed to take that inclusion from 4% to this season 21%. That's brilliant. So one of those success stories was working with a young emerging company called Wellington Ballroom, which is a ballroom house, really. And they are young, they're a young company. And I've had my eye on them because I like to keep, you know, my finger on the pulse and see, you know. And I'd mentored a couple of these young artists. And I went and saw one of their ballrooms last year. And when we had the FAF Club, which unfortunately we didn't have funding for last year because funding's been a time post-COVID, it's like a runway. And I was, the space that I showed you out here before. And I was like, oh my God, it'd be perfect for ballroom, you know? And we have an amazing company in Auckland called FAF Swag, and I was talking about them coming down and maybe doing something collaborative with the local community to lift them up, you know, and a mentor sort of program. And that couldn't happen last year, they weren't ready. And so I've kept in touch and kept, you know, those lines of communication open. And then I approached them when the Whātau Fund happened, and I said, I've got some funding that we can help you make something work. And they came in, and I was hoping we'd just do a ball or something, you know, something amazing, and create some space for some QTP OC excellence, you know. And they came in, they went, actually, we want to make a theatre piece. We want to explore sort of telling our gender journeys and how we found our family, you know, because that's a big deal for a lot of the queer community. Unfortunately, they don't, particularly with our POC community, who's, you know, sometimes that's a difficult conversation with your family, or, you know, particularly if you're changing gender, or, you know. So it was amazing. And they came in saying, we want to have a go at making a piece of theatre. And I was like, okay, great. And I did some mentoring with them and kept it, you know, going in and doing some dramaturging with them. And in fact, when I went in, I couldn't see them for the last nearly 2 weeks before they opened. And I went in and I was like, there's so much gold. It wasn't panning for gold. It was like picking the best nuggets, you know. And I was like, this is really strong. Focus on this is really amazing. And everything from like this amazing, one of them, they're so talented. They're such a talented house. 18 artists on stage. And I sobbed from the moment the lights went down, because I was so proud of them, and it blew me away. And seeing 18 artists on stage just walking into their light for the first time for a lot of them. There were Lazarus, amazing young queer first generation refugee artist who is non-binary and she's beautiful. They're a beautiful writer, and they wrote this extraordinary piece about being first generation and how that already removed her somewhat from her parents. You know, she grew up here. You know, they sort of almost speak different languages, and then of course dealing with their gender journey. And their parents not. It was really incredibly moving, but they're an extraordinary writer. And so within that company, there are so many amazing artists, and I saw so many extraordinary solo shows. And we also supported, so that was a standout, and they went on to win Best Ensemble, Momentous Movement, and Best in Fest, and also Most Promising Pacifica Artist, because the amazing Queen Crier, really, the caller who does all the caller MC, just extraordinary. So they just shut it down. And if anything, I'd scheduled them, I'd curated them to be in the Hannah Playhouse, which is this amazing new theatre space that we had back into the fold this year. And they were our opening weekend, because I knew it was going to be extraordinary. And it was really hard. I had a lot of the festival judges going, well, it's going to be quite a short festival this year, because it was so extraordinary. But the amazing outcome from that, and a couple of the other amazing shows we were able to fund with that Whātau funding. CNZ were there on opening night, and there was it was such an extraordinary moment that by the time I walked out the door, they have said, we want to tour them. This has to tour. So they offered me another yeah. So which is amazing. So that's what I'm sort of working on next before we haven't even had a chance to discuss it. I've got so much going on. So I'm going to work on that next before I'm hoping to tour them to, and that sounds like a lot of money, but when there's 18 artists, you know,
Spreads thin.
me driving a bus. And so we're hoping to tour them to Auckland, hopefully Whangarei as well for Whangarei Fringe, and potentially Dunedin. So again, very ambitious for that amount of money, but they're really into it. And do you know what I think will be amazing too? Because I think for young, emerging queer artists to see that kind of representation and that kind of excellence on stage is extraordinary. And particularly in regions where the queer demographic are drag queens, or, you know, and that, you know, that's fantastic. But this is that's what I said, this is more than ballroom. They've made theatre, they've made an amazing piece of art, and it was exceptionally moving. So that's absolute standout, and I'm super proud of them. Also, we have one of our other big winners of the festival is an amazing young artist called Daniel Naito, who you would absolutely love. They are an extraordinary physical theatre artist, and I have seen Daniel sort of kind of grow up, really. I think I first saw him on stage when he was maybe 18, straight out of Whitireia, I think it was Whitireia. And then he's done shows over the last, but he's just developed, he's such a unique talent. And he did a show called Only Bones V.2, which was based on another exceptional show called Only Bones, which inspired him when he saw it when he was 18.
Ah, okay. And
he worked with Tom Merchant, who's the artist, and who is also titled The Artist. Anyway, and no, he's amazing. He is an exceptional physical theatre artist, and you can see that Daniel's, you know, just must have blown his mind, because when I first saw Tom's work, I saw Only Bones in 2018 and was just like, oh my God, it was exceptional. And so he's made a whole new piece of theatre, which was so innovative, so quirky. When I tell you, so simple to soul. He's in this round and there's one beam of light, and his physicality tells all these stories. But if I told you that he sings a duet with his knees, you'd be like, what? But if I told you it was one of the most brilliant, funniest things I've ever seen in my life, because it was so absurd, but also so simple. And sounds simple, but I don't know how he did it. And the night that I went, we had the San Diego director over, and I said, you need to come and check out Daniel because he's amazing. And I knew the show was going to be brilliant. And he just laughed his ass off the whole. Kevin was just like, this is brilliant. I've never seen anything like it. So unique and so easily tourable. So he just smashed. He won Best Solo. He won a Tour Radio Award to San Diego because Kevin was just like, I love the show. And he's also going to Melbourne. So he just had a stellar, like, I knew he'd got the Melbourne Award, and unfortunately I had to ask him because there were a couple of people in contention. So you always want the awards to be a surprise. But I had to ring him because he was doing another contract, and I had to make sure that he was able to do it. So I had to let him know about that. But then as the adjudication went on, because those, just before we have the adjudication with all the judges, I have to communicate with these awards and give them the nominees and get they have input, the other festivals have input of what will work for them, where they can place them, you know. And Daniel was also over from Melbourne, which is, you know, they all came over in the last week while I'm broken and I'm going hosting people, manaakitanga. I think by that stage I'm just manic. So Daniel had a pretty great night because he knew he'd won one. Because I'd had to tell him, but he had no idea the other. Amazing. So it was so amazing. And to see an artist who's developed so well, you know, that's the joy for me.
That's so special. Now, you are somebody who, this job would be plenty on its own for most people, but you are an artist in your own right. And you also encourage that among the staff that work here with you at the Fringe. You mentioned that some of them had their own shows on during the Fringe.
Yeah.
Why is that an important thing for you to make sure it's still happening and they're not just confined to their job at the Fringe?
Well, as I also said when we were chatting earlier, one of the hardest things about my job, due to funding and just the way that New Zealand Fringe, this is our 33rd year, so I feel like I'm trying to catch up on balls that were potentially dropped historically. I don't know why we're not already on multi-year funding. We should be. We're one of the oldest, most successful festivals. It's the largest multidisciplinary festival in New Zealand. But every year, you know, we're still applying. Again, I told you we've made great progress with some great news today about festivals funding being siloed away from, because often we're competing with the artists that we're trying to support, which is just maddening. The hardest part of the job is every year I have to build my team again. And I had such an exceptional team this year, and of course they're all really keen to come back. But, you know, that's 6 months away and anything can happen, you know, and then it's not a hostage situation as much as I put them in an escape room last night. And it's also important that they get it, because you know what it's like when with the festivals on, we're working 12-hour days, 7 days a week.
Yeah, I think if you were to write down exactly what you actually require of them or yourself, it's unbelievable. It really is.
Yeah, the JD is a lot of details and ends with things and stuff. No, I'm joking. Because, you know, it is, and it's ever changing, and every artist that we deal with is different. And, you know, I'm also an artist, so I have empathy for the fact that every artist is the most important person in the world, and so is their show. There's not another 600 events happening. It's just theirs. So it's important to work with like-minded people who get it. And so by chance, you know, majority of our team are also artists. And this is a festival that's for artists and led by artists. So, yeah, it's kind of the kaupapa. So, and that comes all the way down through management as well. Myself, I do have a lot of people say to me, when are you going to do a Fringe show as well? And I'm like, are you serious? And the last Fringe show I did was a solo show, and I played 3 different characters, mostly because I wanted to write a scene where I played multiple characters and they have an argument.
Ooh.
So I was like, yeah, that's not going to be happening again. They were like, you should do that post-mortem again. I was like, no. Or it'll be my post-mortem.
It literally would be.
So, but that's a privilege that my team get to do. So they have shows on, or they're producing shows, or they're directing shows, or they're in a show as well. So, or have play readings, which is great because they get it and they're passionate about it, and also they know the artists. I don't need to explain the kaupapa to them. Sure. And kaupapa is Māori for intention, or the idea.
Before we dive into you as an artist, I suppose we already have, but even further, you're also a director of another festival.
Well, director's probably not the right word. I'm a producer of, CCAT, which holds the New Zealand Fringe Festival, Classical on Cuba, which is another festival we do in September, and Cuba Dupa, which is Wellington's, it's New Zealand's biggest street festival. Mm-hmm. So in Wellington, New Zealand, we have the main sort of street, not in the business sector, but the main street in the arts sector really, is called Cuba Street, and we shut off the entire, it's like, I think it works out to be like 7 or 8 blocks. And within that, we have like 50 performance spaces within that, everything from like a mammoth circus tent, and
I'd watch a circus then. And like huge stages, like I MC the Ngātaniwha stage, which is the biggest central stage, which is all of one of the massive car parks in there. So the council, because it's also heavily council funded. So because you can imagine how much work it takes to orchestrate shutting down most of the city.
A lot of the city.
Yeah.
For an entire weekend.
I didn't appreciate that. Oh, wow. Okay.
So we start to build this year, thankfully. Usually we'd build on the Friday, but this year we started the builds of the stages on Thursdays without shutting the streets down. And then from Friday night at 12 o'clock, we have to shut everything down so we can put all the infrastructure in and everything, and keep it safe, because, you know, we've got hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of equipment everywhere. And also for safety we had, you know, 150,000 people coming to, you know, because it's a massive family event as well. And I'm the curator and producer for the Ngā Toi Māori stage, which is predominantly te reo. So a lot of amazing te reo artists, and we have a sort of kaupapa that 20% of the music will be te reo based, and also work on, we're a team, so, you know, we uphold that. But as I say, Cuba Dupa we share the marketing team. So which is massive for them, because Cuba Dupa happens 2 weeks after New Zealand Fringe. And they kept going, it's massive. And I'm like, it's 2 days. New Zealand Fringe is 24 days, including the gala. So I'm already broken. But most of my mahi on the festival happens in sort of October, you know, 6 months beforehand, when I program the stage, and then I sort of jump back in. If I'm lucky, I get a day. But that's also happening while I'm reconciling our art. You know, it's a massive job.
That it is ginormous. Now, you're doing all of this, and you're still performing and gigging. Can we take a dive into your musical side? Now, you've casually dropped in today that you've performed with the Auckland Symphony Orchestra.
The APO, actually.
Oh, sorry. Okay. My bad.
At least 20 more. Yes. Yeah. That's what was the interesting thing when I got approached about this role, or when the role became available, and they said, "Would you be interested?" I had just had an amazing year as an artist, and which sounds bizarre talking to a friend who's from England when there's been not a lot happening.
It's true.
But we were very blessed here to have compassionate and very smart leadership through the crisis.
You hearing that, Boris? I hope you're watching this.
Absolutely directed at you and the Orange Goblin, who is up on got arrested yesterday.
He did? Yes. I watched that with glee on my face.
Same. Yeah, isn't that terrible?
Yeah.
I went to watch the live stream.
It's brilliant.
But I was like, you know, they're going to get it's like Al Capone. They get him on stupid felony charges. Why he should be arrested for the hundreds of thousands of innocent people that died from his negligence. Anywho, art.
Didn't expect that one today.
Can't have art without politics.
True.
So yeah, I'd had an amazing couple of years as an artist over, ironically, half of 2020 and 21. So I'd done three films, toured with the Auckland Philharmonic, or doing Aretha, after Aretha passed, bless her heart, with the amazing Bella Kololo and Bik Ranga. So which was amazing. And also a show, because of COVID restrictions, had been moved. It was like the ever-changing rescheduling, you know, as we all know. And so that happened. And while I was getting offered this job. And also before that, I had just played Mrs. Lovett in Sweeney Todd, which was lots of fun.
And that was over in Australia?
No, that was here. That was based in New Zealand.
Getting that wrong. I've done that twice today, I think. Was that a long run?
It wasn't as long as it should have been, because of COVID kicked us in the butt. But it was, we just started, I keep joking, we just started sinking our teeth into it. And, but she was a joy. That was a joy to play. And I was very lucky, because when I got offered that role, they're a young sort of emerging musical theatre company called Witch Music Theatre, but Mark Durrell, who had worked with Sondheim, and he's English, and we're very lucky that he's been based over here for the last 7 or 8 years, and he is extraordinary, and he was the MD, and he's really, if I'm honest, the reason that I took the role. And also Chris, who played Sweeney, who's an amazing musician and opera singer, and or singer, musical theatre singer. Yeah, so he had done Sweeney Todd with Sondheim twice, I think, in the UK, and they're very good friends, and so beautiful because, of course, we did it about 8 months before Stephen passed, and got, like, he emailed us the best of luck, and it was amazing. Wow. And of course, none of us were aware of how. So it was the last production of Sweeney Todd to be staged before, you know, because he has to give his blessing to everything, and yeah, so that was extraordinary. So yeah, I was in I'd had a really busy couple of years as an artist, you know, because it is an ebb and flow in this industry. Hence us diversifying and having many strings to our bow, so we don't sit around doing pluck all. And yeah, so I had a great year, and so I was a bit, because I knew how much work it would be, but also I'm really passionate about creating opportunity for other artists, and also I made it very clear that if things arose for me, and I've been really lucky that things have. I did a television show last year, which is a very similar situation that I'm in this year, that I had, like, I think I got through all of lockdown Fringe, because it was Red Fringe. It's like the Red Wedding, it was Red Fringe. and then my flatmate came home. Thankfully, it had happened through the festival, and I was double masked and bathing in sanitizer. But my flatmate came home when I was meant to have a holiday. I had 10 days off, and we all got COVID. So I stayed at bed and did Refringe. I put together another festival for the artists that had to cancel for COVID. So because I'm an idiot. After that, I just got clear, like literally about 48 hours beforehand, and then I went down and shot Under the Vines, which was the second season of a television series that I'm also in, and which was fun. But I had given them a caveat. No, I did 2 different shoots for them. I'd given them a caveat because they wanted me down the week after I'd shot the festival or finished the festival. And I put a caveat and I was like, please give me 2 days. And they sent me tickets for 7:30 the morning after the awards.
Did you make the flight?
Yes, I did.
Yeah, good.
I was pretty dark. That was fun. And she was a comedy character. I was like, yeah, no. So that's worked out, and it's happening again this year. So, which is a real blessing. I did have a moment where I was meant to do a film in January, which thankfully got delayed because I think that may have yeah, I'd be a husk by now if I'd done a film in January this year as well. But yeah, so I'm away shooting. I've got a week. I've got Easter break, and I've got a week working from home or working remotely, and then I'm down in Methven shooting this feature film which I told you about, and Will Have to Kill You.
Well, it'll be worth it. It'll be worth it. Can we mention that at the very end?
Sure.
The thing that you're going on to. I want to reverse now back to younger you, past you.
Yes.
These things don't happen by accident. You've
No.
got to kind of gear yourself up in some way, shape or form through training, through family, whether that be actual family or artistic family. Are you able to talk us through what your upbringing was like in terms of relationship to the arts?
I'm really lucky that both of my parents are, like, my father was a musician, and also worked for several years as a stunty in films, because we grew up in, before my parents separated, and for a while after we separated, before he moved to Fiji, my dad was based in Central Otago, which is where a lot of films were shot, and still are. You know, a lot of the rings were shot down there. And he, so I was in my first film at 6, I think I was, 6 or 7.
Wow.
So I was in, I'll tell you what, that was a terrible film. But, and so we were in, yeah, I was in quite a few films, like Willow. I was in one of the kids in Willow, you know, so which is pretty amazing to get, because I don't even know who Ron Howard was. So I don't know, whatever. Is that getting up? He was like the guy from Happy Days, but I didn't believe my dad because he was old. So I was like, he's not from Happy Days, you know. Anyway, so I was really lucky. I got some experience really early on, and I think that's where my passion, and my brother who's a DOP as well. So I think that's where we both got our sort of first bitten by the bug, as it were. And then I started doing theatre and sort of debating through school, which we were talking about. I'm a master debater. I didn't think you were going to say. Good. So, I was going to say that a private joke, but that sounds even weirder. Anyway, so I got into debate. I just like a good argument, really, and got into debating. But also, I think my mum was a painter, and I think I grew up with parents who were artists, but because they had a mortgage and children, had to get real jobs, and so they never questioned me wanting to be in it. And in fact, they loved it, and they have always lived vicariously through that. Because my mother got into, she should have been a painter, and but you know, she was a mum. Yeah, exactly. Life happened, and so I've been really lucky that my family have always, you know, been into that. Yeah, so raised by frustrated artists who are parents. My dad did say to me, because he's also an engineer, which has been his bread and butter, he said to me, I'm really excited about the thoughts, you know, obviously you've got some talents and I'm really keen for you, but get a trade. So I started, while I was at school before I studied, I trained as a hairdresser as well. So I always had a trade, you know, that was kind of the payoff. He was like, oh, you know, well, get a trade. So I'd sort of started that and then went to jazz school and then ended up here at drama school. I was really fortunate because from drama school, I went straight into fast turnaround television on a show called The Tribe, which I describe as the HPV of TV because it just doesn't go away. Like, that was 20 years ago, and I still get to, like, literally daily, I get tagged in posts by people who should. It was a cult classic, so it was really beloved. It hit, I think what it was kind of, I describe it as a cross between Mad Max and Home and Away. So it was like a soap opera for teenagers.
Right. Okay.
And which was really smart. And so it was, but it was also quite, like, in hindsight, really inappropriate. Like, there was a lot of, you know, they were teenagers having babies, and the storyline wasn't watertight. Like, it was post-Holocaustal. Something had happened that everyone over 18 there'd been some sort of genetic warfare. People over 18 and all the parents had died, so these kids were sort of fending for themselves. Like, it was interesting, but it amazes me that I still get posts daily posts from fans, particularly in the UK. It was huge in the UK and Germany.
I really want to watch it now. I've seen the post from today, but I need to see an episode. Maybe tonight, Ben. Now, something I was always cautious of as I was going through music college and things was the notion of what's the phrase?
Unemployment.
Which concerned me. A jack of all trades is a master of none. However,
that's not finished.
That's what I'm about to say. We're about to say that. Until recently, I thought that was finished because that's what was always told to watch out for by tutors, by older people.
Absurd.
And I've never believed it. It's never felt right. It's never sat right with me. But the full phrase is a jack of all trades is a master of none, but oftentimes better than a master of one. And it generally, probably was in the last 18 months I heard that, and it settled and calmed my nerves. How have you approached that? As somebody who is extremely skilled in all these different areas, have you ever worried about that? Has anybody ever tried to steer you into one in particular?
Well, it's interesting because my father has always been referred to a jack of all trades because he's got he's one of those obnoxiously annoying people, bless his heart, he's a gem. that can look at... I'll never forget, my brother was getting married and he wanted to get like a spit roast thing.
Oh, yeah.
And I remember going with my dad to the place, and I was like, you're not going to hire one of these. And he was going, oh, that's really interesting. He looked at
Taking notes.
and he went home and built two.
Oh.
Yeah. So like, and so I have always, and I also think, like we discussed this earlier too, as a teacher or as a mentor, I don't want to produce, because all of my friends that are successful, you Fly the Conchords, or all these artists that are successful make work. It's the only way to have any consistency or longevity as an artist is to make work. If you're an actor who sits around waiting for your agent to ring, good luck with that. Like it just, particularly in New Zealand where work is, you know. So I'm not good at doing nothing. And though I quite like I like some nothings, a little stretch for a little. But I just always knew that if you want to work, you've got to make it. And also I've got quite a busy brain. I like to be stimulated. I like to learn. You know, I like to be challenged, and I like to learn new skills, because that for me is it's the process that, you know, the old, and it sounds naff, but it's true. Like sometimes the outcome's amazing, and sometimes some of the best work that I've ever made isn't as successful as the Tribe, and the Tribe I would say is my least, you know, like
with you. Yeah.
Success doesn't necessarily equate exception.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Some of the most gifted artists I know, you will never know.
Yes.
Because they that's not what they...
It's not for public consumption.
Yeah. Or that's not their kaupapa, they don't want it, or that's not what they want, they don't want to be... I've always said, and I've said to tutors, students as well, if someone says to me, I want to be famous, I think I said to you.
I like this. I think this should be said.
Well, I had this one, bless her heart, you know, she said, I want to be on Shortland Street, I want to be famous. And I was like, well, if it was a screen acting course, and I said, well, darling, if you want to be famous, anyone can get famous. Shoot someone. It's probably the fastest way to get famous.
It's true.
So with the whole class, and I was like, obviously, that I'm not suggesting that, but if that's your objective, fuck off. You know, like it has to be about the work for me, and that's where I covet the most joy and the most, you know, people. I always describe fame as an uncomfortable byproduct of doing something you are passionate about, that's well received. And as I say, some of the work that I'm most proud of wasn't the most successful, or you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But
yeah, the way you measure it is really important. You know, your success, because success to somebody that has got nothing to do with it and just has maybe seen a post about it is completely different to your success. So you've got to be true to yourself.
And you have no fame, something that's imposed upon you.
Very true.
You have no control over that whatsoever.
Yeah.
You know, so why long for something that's out of your hands? I'd much rather have some input into my own trajectory, or also my own fulfillment. Yeah. You know, I'm really lucky that and again, the work that I'm most proud of has not necessarily been the most successful, you know? So I don't think that necessarily equates success.
I agree. I totally agree.
Yeah.
One of the final things I want to delve into is mental health and well-being and balance. Quite a lot of the time when you are speaking to artists that are very, very busy, the busyness can kind of mask how they're doing under the surface. How do you put anything in place in your life to keep your mental health and well-being good when you are so busy?
That's a really good question. It's been interesting, particularly the last few years, which has been so often hit and miss for a lot of artists, or a lot of work going to something that never comes to fruition. And that can be, because as much as we say a success is in our own, you know, grasp, that you do, that is often the payoff, or sharing the work is the payoff for, you know, the work that you're, the mahi that you're doing. But I saw a beautiful clip from, I think, Ricky Gervais's best work, Afterlife. Is it Afterlife?
Yes.
And there's this beautiful clip where she's explaining happiness, and that happiness is so powerful that you can experience it when it's not even yours. You know, but via osmosis of watching someone else.
Yeah.
I have always... like even talking about Arafata, you know, I'm so proud of my team, and as exhausted and spent, because it's a lot of work, and I put out a lot of energy. And we manakitanga, which is about holding or valuing our artists when we're here, and hosting, really. And that's a lot of energy when you've got hundreds of artists, you know, and try to get to see as much. And so there is a point where you know, when you're out for an entire month and very social, I get depleted and I have to go home. And I'm also, like a lot of artists, I'm an introvert, extrovert. So I'm probably, my happy place is sitting at home reading a book or writing or making music, making beats. Yeah. So, and that's quite insular, introverted work. And if I don't get the time to do that, that's when I feel most depleted. Mm-hmm. So I think I'm really lucky in the fact that it's about balance, it's about give and take. For me, and that was the agreement that I had with CCAT when they offered me the role. I have to be an artist, because if I'm just a director or, you know, a creative director or an administrator, I'll be depleted, and that I won't be any good for any of my artists. So I think it's about finding that balance of filling my own cup so I can fill other people's or make space for them to fill their own cup, you know. So I think that's, and also I think mental health is a spectrum. I think it changes. I feel, as exhausted as I feel now, I feel really joyous. I feel really hopeful after such an outstanding season for both Cuba Dupa and most successful festivals to date. So, you know, that fills my cup, that makes me really hopeful after the last few years, which has been so hard for so many creatives. But it's about taking that time, and also me also being an artist and, you know, creating that space for my own work, because I think that's where we as creatives keep our equilibrium.
For sure.
I mean...
something I've noticed about everything you've said, even just today, not even across the last number of years I've known you, is that it's a balance of energy in and out that's your personal one, because you can't always judge yourself against somebody that has a 9-to-5 and their energy in is when they leave their work and don't do the work. Sometimes us as artists need to do the work to have the energy in.
That's right.
And it's really interesting with your multidisciplinary mindset, that seems to actually be balanced even though you're out of the house a lot, you know, you're busy. You know.
Yeah, absolutely. It's interesting, isn't it? Because I have a lot of friends who, I tell you what I'm sick of hearing, Jamie, and I'm sure you feel the same, because I think a lot of creatives do. People saying to me, "Oh, you're so lucky."
Yes.
You're so lucky.
Yeah.
And
you're
granted,
doing what you love.
Yeah, yeah. So lucky, and I hate my job. And half of me wants to go, well, fucking quit. You know, get it, if that doesn't make you happy, that doesn't fulfill you, but they also, the majority of people who are other artists don't say that to you, because they know how hard it is.
Yes.
And they know this is why we diversify, because I didn't want to sit around and be unemployed, or, you know, and I also want to make stuff, and I want to evolve as a practitioner and as an artist. So the thought that we're lucky, I made a choice a very long time ago that I was going to pursue a career in the arts. And I knew that meant that potentially I would not be able to afford to have a family, or afford to own my own home, or all those simple things that people go and work a shitty 9-to-5 that they hate to do, because potentially that makes them happy, or that, you know, that feeling of security.
It is. It's a grounding thing, I think, for a lot of people.
Well, we don't necessarily. I mean, I'm really fortunate. I've just gone with 2 friends and we've brought, but that's my reality, because there was no way that we were going to be able, we're all creative, so that, and, but it's very much a choice that we make. And it's also it's not a choice. That's the tricky thing. It's a compulsion. Like, we have a very dear friend who, as we say, had circumstances that changed the trajectory of their career, but they will always be an artist.
Yes.
That's innate.
Yeah. Yeah, you don't choose these things. And if you try and compress yourself into a box that isn't you're not going to be alive. That's right. You're going to make yourself ill.
And we have to also stop, like, I think I'm strongly of the opinion that, if anything, and talking about mental health as well, the last few years for me has solidified how intrinsically weaved into our well-being art is. Yes. It's what we've lent on. It's what, we're sitting at home, locked at home, watching movies, watching reruns, watching entertainment, running out of stuff, clocking Netflix, whatever, listening to music. It's what we as humanity, and I'm really in the process, as much as we're trying to change funding situations, I want to go deeper than that, and I would like to rally to a policy level that the arts is part of the health and well-being curriculum of funding, or it's part of policy, that it's what we need, that it's, because I would have thought that the value of the arts should have gone up in the last few years.
For sure. Yeah.
But, it's the first funding to get cut. It's the first, stuff, because, and I get it that we're also in a crisis at the moment, but people aren't going home and, keeping an eye on the stock exchange. Maybe some people are. Maybe they're passionate about it.
Enjoy yourself if you are.
Yeah. I just think it's intrinsically weaved into our well-being.
And there's so much proof of that from the last few years that it should be obvious, but it's not. The last part is a tradition that I've stolen directly, as you well quoted, from Stephen Bartlett. Thank you, Stephen. Each guest that I have on, we take a Polaroid and they forward a question to a future guest. And I am going to take
who did my question?
Kelsey. Kelsey did your question.
Kelsey.
She's written a few. I am going to choose one of them. Do you think you celebrate your achievements enough, and what are you most proud of?
Possibly not, because I think we so often move on to the next thing, or even weirder, the weirdest thing about what we do, particularly if I'm working on a film or something, that you will do the mahi. That's what matters to me, and that's the bit that I enjoy. It's the whole Johnny Depp thing. Doesn't even watch his films. Yeah, because that's not
when
interesting.
It's finally out, and it's years down the line.
And you're sort of like, it doesn't. You're not emotionally attached to it anymore. It's sort of so But I celebrate I can't talk about my team without getting emotional. I'm immensely proud of what we achieved this year, and I'm so proud of my team, and I'm so proud of making a safe space for artists and for it to be profitable for them this year. And we had the awards show, and it was such, it's the most inclusive and most diverse program we've ever had this year, which I'm super proud of. And it was such a joyous occasion, the awards. And that I'm proud of. I think I was proud last year of being able to still provide this amazing space for artists at such a hard time. This year, I'm really proud of the fact that I was able to have some impact in the community. I'm part of the process of implementing some change, some big picture stuff. That's what I'm really proud of. That's, I don't have kids. I didn't, and so that's kind of my legacy. So, that's what I'm proud of. And I'm also hungover and really tired. Thanks, Oprah.
She's done incredibly well. It's so amazing to see everything you do within your kinesphere, but everything that you're doing here is not just important for the Fringe time. It's giving hope, and it's paving a pathway for people that are potentially wanting to be artists in the future to see actually it is possible. And the fact that, you know, they've got the Fringe as a landmark they can go to, or the Fringe is around the area, but then it gives them hope to carry that on in between them. And it's so important because it literally is life-changing, everything you're doing. Thank you so much for your time, your energy, and doing exactly what you do, because without people like you, we wouldn't know it's possible. So thank you. What's next for you? Because I do want you to mention this very exciting film that you've mentioned.
I am, so as I said, what's next, big picture, is organising an amazing tour for Arawhata. That's the Arawhata poster behind them with that amazing excellence there. But immediately, in 2 weeks, I'm off down south to Methven to work on a feature film with Elijah Wood and Michael Smiley, who plays my husband, who's amazing. You recognize? And so I'm working on a feature film called Bookworm, and I'm playing quite a large role. So it's quite exciting, and slightly villainous role as well, which is great because I often play sort of comedy characters, or for a long time I played multiple characters in films, like in Succession, who died on a road. I don't know what was happening. I got gunned down. You know, it was crazy. I was like, they were like, someone dies. Vanessa, she's a great corpse. You know? So that's really exciting. I'm really excited about that, and that'll sort of feel like it'd be really nice to go somewhere and be an artist, you know, and because I think that's the thing. Doing all the work that I do makes me a better artist too, because I have more respect for all the people behind the scenes that make things happen, and yeah, that's what I'm excited to do.
Amazing. Well, I can't wait to hear more, probably this time next year when I'm back over, as to what you've been up to in the year. But thank you again for your time. If you're still listening at home, thank you so much. Please like, share, do all of those things, but most importantly, create with people, connect with people, and be exactly you. Until the next time, peace.
Cheers.
Woo. We did it. Thank you.
Pleasure.
Amazing.
You got tears. You are Oprah.